So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever folks are. Much appreciated. First of all, I'm going to introduce my brother in arms, my colleague Jamal. Jamal, feel free, go for it.
Okay. So welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Just want to like to start off with a territorial acknowledgement. I'd like to acknowledge that the University of Waterloo acknowledges that much of the work takes place on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee people. Our main campus is situated on the Parliament Tract, the land grant of the Six Nations that includes 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. Our active work towards reconciliation takes place across our campuses through research, learning, teaching, and community building, and is centralized within the Office of Indigenous Relations. So again, thanks so much. And this event here today is special to me, special to my colleagues, and I'm so thankful for our guests that we have here today to present. And then turn it back over to her.
Thank you, Jamal. And I always want to give credit to folks who have planned this. There's a whole team, and Jamal was a part of the team that planned this. Jamal, Wendy, Nancy, Clive, Kate, so many folks. And a big thing for me is to always acknowledge the work that people put in. I know I swoop in here and it looks like I was running this, and no, I was not. So I want to say thank you very much for that. One thing we need to do right off the bat in terms of a little housekeeping, I want to mention that this event is being recorded. So FY, it is being recorded. So first of all, I appreciate everybody who is here is live. But if you miss this, it'll be recorded and shared. I want to invite everybody, not just for this event today on February 3rd, but for all the events that will be happening across campus virtually, unfortunately, virtually across campus over the next 28 days. But really, I want us to think about what we'll be doing post February. I want us to be thinking, and as you mentioned, have you seen on the notices, on the daily bulletins, that a big part of what I do in this space is for us to rethink and reimagine Black history. Rethink and reimagine Black History Month. I know some of y'all are probably signed on and you're like, wait a minute, Christopher owns ties and he wears ties? Like, what is going on? And this is deliberate, folks. This is very, very deliberate. And I was saying to folks before, and when I got up, I was like, whoa, I haven't tied a tie in 2 years. Nor have I worn a tie at Waterloo since I had my job interview. But this is deliberate. And I was saying, because the same way that there's a particular image and view of people see me on campus, Black professor, and now the AVP of Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Anti-Racism, there's an image. There's an image of how I present myself on campus. But now you see me with this tie and this button up. It's like, wait a second, who is this guy? What does this space represent? No, I'm not here trying to quote unquote flex, but I'm challenging your perceptions of who I am, who the office is, and who we are in terms of representing Black history and Black History Month. And it's the same way that we take our work, on campus. We seem to think that it's all about just confronting anti-Black racism. It's all about race. But a big part of what we do, and why I'm saying we're going to expand the 28 days, the 29 days to broader across our campus and what we do, particularly in our work in the Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Anti-Racism Office, the EDIRO, as we're branded as, is to look at what might seem as quote unquote normal. Apologies for using ableist language, and see the layers behind it. When you see somebody wearing a tie or a suit, what does that represent? For some, that might represent power. For others, a tie, if you look at the history of a tie, it represents colonialism. It represents, for a lot of folks, if you're in the spaces of understanding gender identities, the phallic references of a tie. So think about what a tie points to, particularly men wearing. There's been debates across the Commonwealth of why do we need to wear a tie in these parliamentary buildings, in these spaces, to represent colonialism. So for me here sitting in this space now is not to say I'm the quote unquote boss, but it's for you to start challenging perceptions and challenging understandings of people on this campus, of how you navigate and how you sit on this campus. I want you to see the intersections of Blackness and Black people. I want you to think about how important it is for a lot of folks who cannot tie a tie, particularly young Black folk. When you're going for a job interview and they're looking at you and say, hey, how come you don't have a suit and tie? Is that a barrier? And I mention this because one event we're going to call it Tie a Tie with Dr. Taylor. It's going to be a little icebreaker, but you're just going to come in, we're going to chat, we're going to listen to some music, and I'll show folks how to tie a tie. Small things like that might seem very benign to people, but have a massive impact. So this is where I want us to go today. I'm not going to come here and talk about, this and that and this person and name that person. You folks know what I do in these particular spaces when it comes to Black history. I'm a Black historian. I teach Black history, but I want you to rethink and reimagine how you feel and you understand about Blackness. The space and place of Black people on this campus, in Waterloo region, in Ontario, in Canada, globally. When you hear the names of folks like Dr. King Jr., I want you to move away from what we call the Santa Clausification of Dr. King. The good things that are palatable for folks. If we are going to talk about Dr. King, I want you to think about Dr. King in the sense of where he came from in terms of radical love. I want you to think Dr. King in the space of being someone who was for Black power. I want you to rethink and reimagine Dr. King not as just the guy who said, I want little Black boys and little white girls to hold hands and go to class. I want you to think about the Dr. King who was murdered because he was for the rights of what we call quote unquote poor people. The poor people's movement is what killed him. His stance against the Vietnam War is what killed him. I want us to rethink in that particular space. And this was an individual who faced violence and imprisonment for the betterment of society. So again, I want us to reframe and rethink. Folks, we have a fantastic lineup of individuals coming up. We have David, Dwayne, Tennille. And the first person I would like to introduce is Tennille Warren. Tennille is a non-binary, queer, Black immigrant identifying intersectional equity educator, and consultant. They have worked in nonprofit leadership and program development for more than a decade. As an intersectional equity educator, Tennille delivers trainings, creates policies, and guides diversity and equity and inclusion strategic planning across several sectors. They are currently the Equity and Inclusion Officer for the Waterloo Region District School Board. Folks, please welcome Tennille.
It keeps jumping back and forth. Hopefully it'll stay this time. Today was the first time I actually saw the flyer, the ad, the image for this event. And, I tweeted this and I'm naming it very clearly and specifically is that it was a very emotional image for me to look at as a non-binary queer Black person to be on this panel, not only with two men whose knowledge, talent, advocacy that I'm very aware of and supported and experienced in my time here, but just being on this panel with Black men and representing an identity and a community that is often not put into what would be considered Black mainstream spaces. And so that was a significant moment that I think I'm still embracing and still processing, and kind of very much leans into the thoughts I want to share around Ojima and the theme of Ojima and what that means for us. Because we're talking about collective responsibility. We're talking about something that is fundamental to the liberated Black futures of all of us. And for me, as someone who is guided by the principles of Kwanzaa, which wasn't something I always did, I found myself shifting through identities, trying to settle and find space here, away from Jamaica, away from my people. I needed something to kind of ground and voice. And as I was reconnecting to to Africa, to my African blood memory. I had questions, I had things I was moving through. And so a GMI is something I always come back to throughout the year because of what it represents. And what it says is everyone in the community matters. And we're living through a moment right now. I think about last year's February 2021, February 2020. I'm someone who Black History Month always sneaks up on me. I'm Black. I'm not waiting for February to come around. I'm like, oh yeah. And the only reason why it didn't sneak up on me this year is because of my job. I have to plan something. But it always sneaks up on me because I'm not waiting on February. But each of those Februarys, something is very unique about them. And this one, February 2020 didn't predict the civil rights movement that would come after George Floyd. And we're still in that movement. But now we're in that moment of the white lash of that movement that demands us to lean into our Zuma, our collective responsibility to each other. And in each of those years, amidst a pandemic, we know that Black life continues to be lost. And as we move through the layerings of that Black life, we know that Black life continues to be lost in different ways. So the rate of Black suicide, Black male suicide, Black male youth suicide goes up. We know that in the crisis of domestic violence, a Black woman is continuing to be harmed. And we know that in the violence of threat, of murder, we know that Black trans lives, Black non-binary lives, they're still at the top of that list. So when I think about a collective responsibility, I think about the most marginalized identities in our community. I think about those who are Black and disabled, Black and queer, Black and feminine, the people who are paying the highest price in this moment of the white lash. So when I think of this question, I'm like, we're all committed to the liberation. We're all committed to the forward path, the movement, but who is in your collective? Or when I say who is in your collective, I don't mean that everybody needs to be everybody's best friend, that everybody needs to be hanging out. Because a part of your collective is how do all of these groups coexist? And how are all of our liberation shared and connected? Because we continue to say that racial justice cannot be achieved if the most marginalized people in our community don't have access to that justice. And I keep thinking about what are we doing to create access to that justice? I navigate different spaces through my work, through my personal activism. And I feel like I'll go in one Black space and I'll always see those Black people in that Black space. I'm in the Black business space, they're always in the Black business space. I'm in the Black art space, they're always in the Black art space. In the academic space, they're in the academic space. In the queer space, they're in the queer space. But bringing those communities together, it's a task. And so I come back to what is our collective responsibility to each other? Because when you look at the history of the movement, Chris talked about Martin Luther King Jr. And, we've seen a lot of advocacy for government funding, which I'm not against. Let's be clear, I'm not against government funding. But we also know that least likely to be registered and have the structures to qualify for that government funding, Black charities, Black grassroots organizations, because the things that we need for Black liberation, the white system is not going to fund. And when we look at the historical movements, the people who created Black business funded the movement. The churches, because remember, MLK Jr. was also a pastor, funded the movement. The Freedom Riders were fed along the path by people in their homes. Everything was connected. There was a collective understanding and responsibility. And those movements were also led by identities. We're still moving towards a path where when you see that big image of Black liberation, we talk about Martin Luther King Jr., but we don't talk about the people who are behind him. We're still not talking about the work that Coretta did. We're not talking about the work that Bayard did. And so if we're not speaking about the history, collectively, the collective contributors to that history. It's the same way we talk about Viola Desmond in Canada, but we don't talk about Coretta Best, who did it before Viola Desmond. We talk about Rosa Parks, we don't talk about Claudette Colvin. And we don't recognize the 5 names that were on that Supreme Court case with Rosa Parks. We don't talk about the collective, the work that the NAACP put together for that to happen. We think about the land that we're on, the territory on, the Haldeman Tract, the land of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe people. We know that there were Black settlements here. The first Black settlement was the Kohlenberg settlement. Paulo Brown and 34 Black people settled. That was before the Queensbush settlement. When we see that story, they talk about the neighbors and the white neighbors helping them to try and create home and livability on that land. And those neighbors who remain unnamed, I think those neighbors were those indigenous people of this land. But why would you want to give them credit? And so those people came together collectively and built a community and did work, and they moved collectively in different spaces. And so to talk about, we have the Black Business Fund, we have the Black political movement, and with the Black workplace movement, diversity hiring, and how are those things working collectively together? What are we sacrificing in other spaces for each of those spaces to exist? Because there are a couple of things I think about as, a trajectory over the last 11 years. 11 years ago, moving to Canada, I don't think I would be on this panel. Real talk. I think my identities would exclude me from being on this panel. But as we move through things, we're still seeing the spaces that are exclusionary. I'm waiting to envision that meeting where the Black business people say, how can we support the Black activists? Because our liberation is not separated. There's an image that comes to mind for me when I think about the recent violence against the housing encampments, and not just against the housing encampment. There's been a significant protest taking place in neighboring Hamilton. And one of our activist leaders, Sarah Jama, who also happens with Black and Disabled, is a leader in that movement. And I always think about where I hear that name and where I see those images and who is advocating and recognizing, because it's a very visceral photo of the police physically harassing Sarah. And I think about the statements that were made about equity, diversity, and inclusion. I think about people like Sarah. And the Black organized professional communities that are not there in those moments because they're making a choice between that liberation and the liberation that whiteness has ordained and said, this is what we have allowed for you to be the kind of Black as. So I think we find ourselves in a moment with everything that's going on around us in Ottawa, different movements, White Lives Matter, all the things are happening. We find ourselves in a moment that if we're going to move together forward, we have to look back at the legacies of the leaders that created the space that we can now choose to be even more splintered than we were before, and determine how we're going to find a collective thread that moves through. And that thread doesn't mean that we need to all agree and we all need to like each other and all need to have dinner together. But it means that we need to recognize that there is no collective liberation if we give up and forget our responsibility to every member of the community. Because all of these bodies that exist now have always existed. And even when we go back to the pre-colonial knowledge, when we say, okay, we're going to learn about Africa, I want you to think about that. When we say we're going to learn about Africa, and we learn about the kings and queens of Africa, which kingdoms of Africa are we studying? Are we just studying the ones with kings and queens? Because there are a lot of them that were just women. And there were many that were led by women, and the women chose the husbands. Are we just studying the kingdoms that look like the royalty of colonization? Or are we actually going back to look at the elements of our society, of our collectivist historical culture that has been colonized and continues to be colonized? How are we engaging with that blood memory? You know, one of the things I always teach about liberation and where we get our liberation from is, if we want to understand what Black movement looks like, what collective justice looks like in a post-colonial slavery world, we have to go back to Haiti. And not just look at the revolution, but look at the structure and society that they were building, and how colonization was so threatened by that Black liberation, that Black unification, that Black definition of what our future could look like, that they have gone on an intentional warpath to continue to pillage and rape Haiti. So our liberations are both connected and very much dependent on us learning behind the images of what those historical Black figures did, those people who we call on. Marcus Garvey is behind me right now. We need to learn about the collectives that were behind them. That is our liberation. That is my gift. That is my message. Thank you.
Tennille, thank you. I mean, I'm taking notes as I go through here. Our liberation is not separated. I want folks to sit with the names, to sit with the histories, plural, to sit with the communities and sit with these intersections that Tennille mentioned as you're thinking again. We're reimagining and revisiting these stories. So thank you, Tennille, much appreciated. And yes, I do want dinner with you for the record, because if you don't know Tennille can cook real well. So just letting y'all know. Top chef. Grab a beer too. Plug. So next up, we have, well, I got the shortest bio intro right now. We have Dwayne Morgan. Period. Full stop. Dwayne, do you think?
All right. Thank you so much, Christopher. I appreciate that. Thank you, Tennille, for that valuable contribution. And listening to you, I kind of changed up the poems that I'm going to share. You brought up the whole with George Floyd. And since then, I've been hearing a lot about, allies and allyship and that sort of thing. And I think it's really important for people to understand that you can't call yourself an ally. That is not a crown that you can put on your own head. The community based on your actions. And I find that a lot of people like to go and say, yes, I'm an ally of the Black community. But if we were to ask you, well, what have you said that you're an ally? And that's not good enough. So I'm going to read a poem first, and then so this is called How to Be an Ally. In 1945, through constant daily effort, the Allied forces brought an end to the Second World War. Have you ever wondered how this world would look if the Allies never showed up? But they did, every day, because that's what allies do. They show up every day until victory is proclaimed. As I stand on the front lines fighting for my humanity, I wonder how I can have eyes and still be so alone. How so many claim to have my back, yet I feel like I'm on my eyes. That many don't understand the power and privilege they exercise, call themselves an ally, giving themselves titles that their actions haven't earned, hoping to trick us into believing that they're on our side of the fight, but through your actions, our side if you are an ally of mine. So let's be clear. You anything around here. I am not interested in reposts, retweets, and likes. Do you ever look at the price before paying lip service? Your hashtags won't save my life. It's time to put some skin in the side me. I need you to stand in front of me. I need you on the front lines. I need you to my oppression or willing to fight against your own and privilege, because we are done validating cultural tourists, exploring our experiences with checkpoints. We season your lives and are left with no one by our sides when we are being by reality and bullets. I wonder what it's like to be able to choose when you're willing to risk, and how when my existence is at risk every day of my life. Part of the power that comes with privilege is the ability to name things, shape the narrative, advantageous positions like ally. You see, if my oppression is happening every day, dear ally, what have you done for me today? Have you picked up the phone and checked on your Black friends? Have you felt buried under the weight of their hopelessness? Has their anguish inspired any part of you to actually? What part will you denounce? What parts of your privilege will you build trenches to fight against? That burden and exhaustion that you temporarily feel is the weight of the experiences we've been born into, and when we want to carry it. What if instead of your coat, you were forced to check your privilege at the door? Would you feel oppressed? Something that should be yours, something that we have never reason than the color of our skin. Understand that when a society is shaped by systemic racism, you only need to exist to benefit or be oppressed by it. So now is the time. Battle lines have already been drawn in our blood, and we are tired from fighting a war that isn't even ours to fight. We are on the front lines fighting your war. How do you sleep at night when we can't take it anymore? So what will you do with the power and privilege that you have in this life so that we can see your action, crown you as? I want to do, or the next couple pieces really just looks at some of the contemporary realities for a lot of young people who look like me. To be a gift, born into this world, male, packaged in Black skin, is to be constantly reminded that your life is disposable. It's meaning and value and isn't protected by the law. You live with the knowledge that justice is a drunk that cannot be served. We, the Black gifts, are the first to be accused and the last to be believed. We are the guilty until proven innocent, the aggressor despite the evidence. We are the hoops for which loopholes are made. We are the Sambos, the puppets. Our value determined by the worth we bring our puppeteers. So dance, Negro, dance. Rap, Black boy, rap. Run, boy, run. But what about those of us who are regular or average, who don't have gifts or talents, needs, who are just their bodies, packaged in Black skin, stuck on modern day plantations, being abused at will, and people wonder why we seldom smile and it seems like our looks could kill. We are the ones who put basketball bombs before they can walk with a hole beyond their packaging. We are the ones that make elevators go quiet, purses and loved ones clench tighter. We are the deer that stare down the barrel of guns, but there is no license hunt us. We are the suspicious packages at the airport or in any store with goods that we aren't supposed to be able to afford, whether in a hoodie or a suit, accused of driving while Black in minivans or coupes. We are the Black licorice discarded at Halloween, the silhouette used for target practice by the police, the Black men who spend their days wanting nothing but to be human with respect and dignity. So this is for every Trayvon, Jaquan, Marcus, Jordan, every Black man considered a nobody despite having a name, for everyone who has ever felt the pain of race, for the empty beside a Black man on the train. For we are the ones who meet death on cold asphalt, guarded like roadkill. We are the ones, worthless bodies packaged in Black skin that nobody seems to want. We are the voiceless. We are the ones. Thank you. It was 4 a.m. when she woke me. Remember the cold sweat on the back of my neck like it was yesterday. 14 years have now passed, and I can still remember the pregnancy test in my hand and how it felt like my heart and my world stopped simultaneously, and nobody knows this. But at every doctor's visit, as he would perform routine ultrasounds, I would look from the ground to the screen, hoping, praying to God that none of the squiggly lines that I was seeing would confirm this little being as a boy. And I don't feel good about it. But I've lived a long time in skin despised simply for its hue, so every November I go populous, not out of disrespect, I'm just not a fan of Remembrance Day, remembering that there has never been a plane sent to save us. We are the displaced, our bodies and religion stolen. We were given a new prophet as they used us to make profits. Ask Nike what a Black man is worth. For hundreds of years, We have been killed as a form of amusement, gunned down with no fear of repercussions. So don't blame me for not wanting to be burdened by the birth of a Black boy born into a world on his back, forcing me to teach him how to write and his rights, knowing that even my greatest efforts can't keep him alive when his skin is a threat. So yes, I stood there, staring blankly at the screen, hoping, praying to God that none of the squiggly lines that I was seeing would confirm this little being as a boy, maybe. Having a girl would increase my chances of not having a child who'd grow up to be a hashtag ending, because the killing of Black men has been a trend since forever. So we write Black Lives Matter. To inform others, but to try to convince ourselves in a world that is constantly showing us otherwise. And my heart can't help but break for those parents who have had their children snatched from their lives. It was an April afternoon when I found myself pacing around the delivery room, wondering if my prayers would be answered at 3:20. The most precious girl was presented to me, and I cried uncontrollably for hours, knowing that I had just been blessed. Not because having a girl would make her worth more, but because we live in a world where Black boys will always be worth less. So thank you. I'm going to end on this last poem and turn things back over to Christopher after this one. But thank you so much to the university and the admin and everybody for inviting me here to share as part of this celebration. On your mark, get set. And so it begins. On the dark continent of enlightenment, the place from where all history comes, a people who were so ahead of their time they were sending text messages when they only had drums. Out of the starting blocks, we were off to an early lead as world travelers and explorers, sharing our philosophies, creating universities and structures that would make the world stop and wonder before passing the baton on to the relay's next runner in the Caribbean Sea, who lost a bit of ground through the Middle Passage and slavery, but nobody said that the race would be easy. So for over 400 years, they continued to run, limping through the pain, knowing that cramps will come and it's gonna hurt sometimes, but you've got to focus and keep going through the plantations, the lynchings, and the hate, even when the spectators in the stands call you other than your name, because it is not what we are called, but what we answer to that is important. Victory is an uphill climb, and we've got to continue to rise like Lazarus, knowing that even the slightest of steps can mean so much. Sister Rosa Parks sat down to stand up, so I can't give up as I try to make sense of this baton that I've placed in, that has been placed in my hand while I struggle just to be accepted as a man in this world that seems more concerned with whether or not I'm endowed down south, when I'm all about being endowed in the places where it counts. My family and my community, because knowledge of self is like a garden. If it is not cultivated, you cannot reap a harvest. Victory will come to those who choose to run the hardest, and it really doesn't matter if you know the secret, because not everyone will believe enough in themselves to do something with the information. No one was made to be a spectator in life. We are all the active participants in the race to fulfill our destiny. So when the baton comes, take it and run, because failure isn't a crime, but aiming too low is. Because if you reach for the top of a tree, you might never get off the ground. But if you shoot for the stars, you might at the very least get to the top of that tree. And I might not get to the finish line with you, but I will continue to strive to carve out my own space before passing this baton on to a new generation of runner, confident in victory, because success, it runs in my race. Thank you all very much.
Dwayne. That's all I got, my brother. I mean, so first, just a note, technical pieces. So we are recording this, folks. If folks, we're getting some messages over. If folks missed anything, we are recording this. The recording will be available. Just quickly, I want folks to think about, the words that Dwayne was speaking in that moment. Dance, Negro dance. What we answer to is important. The identities and is building on what Tennille was speaking of Black masculinity, Black man's identity in these spaces. Very, very important. What we wear, what we see, how we are, how we navigate spaces, critically important. And I say this all the time to folks. I might be shooting myself in my own foot here when we talk about education. A lot of my learning has come from the arts. A lot of my learning has come from roots reggae, lovers rock, music, artists, like Dwayne, like Tennille, like our next speaker, David. So I want us to reshape our thinking, again, reimagine, rethink our thinking about how we can consume Black history. It doesn't necessarily have to be in a classroom. Through the arts, movies, music, performances. So Dwayne, much appreciated on that. So next up, we have David Deliska. David was born in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, and raised in West Palm Beach, Florida, and currently residing in Scarborough. David, I feel for you in this weather, man. I'm sorry. Feel for you, homie. David is a writer, poet, actor, and humorist. A versatile artist, he uses stories about the immigrant, newcomer, and diasporic experience and other various human realities to bridge the realms of communication. His works and performances have been featured in the Toronto Star, CBC, Netflix. My brother, welcome.
Thank you for the intro. Much gratitude for those who came before me with their perspectives. Really enjoyed that. It's always kind of great where you get to perform, but as well as you get to exchange and learn. So thankful for that opportunity. Going to do some pieces. Let's see how they go. I'm thinking about the collectiveness and I think about my first unit, my father and my brother. And this is this piece that goes that. It's called Reign Supreme. My brain pours water out my tear ducts to heal me. Jay Electronica. For a while, I'm talking about 3 years, it was just the three of us. Father, son, papa, fue, moi, immigrants. Status is sort of a running gag for us, sprinting to influence the tone of all of our stories. Such a complicated rush. Running away, pour qui ça, to seek refuge from home, away from home, separates the pact, complicates the pact, a rush that was never straightforward. I mean, what a joke. Status is an existential crisis of where does it all work, if at all. Popham was learning on the fly, too busy to focus on the buzzing migraine of making it happen, learning about these two now diaspora son, learning this new diaspora home, pinched garage in Belgrade, cramped suite on Broadway, a half a room, 42nd in Pinewood, learning. His mother tongue helps him understand his thoughts, man. Reveals context of the life improvisation. Ibali 4. A shell shock to learn that it doesn't translate well on its own. Learning and adjusting. Learning language through South Florida sports, through the Heat, through the Dolphins, through Venus, through Serena, through commentators and box scores, onto his sons, accented but even more connected, through cheers, joys, chants and boos, through thrills of victory, agony of defeat, to try, to hope. My whole world, Tucker, my whole world was my brother, Popham, and sports. 17 years later, Ann Arbor, Michigan. Status is still some sort of running gag for us. Home looks different for all of us, mostly because borders are always involved. L'amour, talking love, avec sports still connects us. Big game at the big house. Miss, I'm here. Oi! Ohio State, UM. I drove from Toronto. Popham flew in from PBI. Bro hosted with faculty tickets. My bro is a faculty. Rain monsoons the whole stadium. The cold, it slices through the air. We're swimming in wind. We're pinched in together. Cramped at a stadium with 100,000, and I shed tears of joy to blend into the storm. Watching Popham merged out, cheer about. That's something that gave us additional voices, supporting the display of effort, the allegories of hope, reminiscing when it was just the three of us, pinched together, cramped and tight, and hoping, still tight, tightened by that very hope, laughing at the full circle. All right, so that's that one. You're doing poems. I think I find myself with my community. Community comes in many different forms, whether it's family, whether it's your chosen family, whether it's the people you share hobbies with or share community in a physical space, whether it's neighborhood, jobs. I'm able to find myself deeper, and I realize I'm able to find more of what I'm not as well too. And I think that's important as we navigate to be the best that we can be for people, is to also to be the best that we can be for ourselves and understanding ourselves in that aspect. Because that also helps contribute to collective work. So here's this piece. I am not for everybody. Positive entropy, I was never meant to be, so I ain't trying to be for everybody. To learn me, you gotta earn me. Look, I'm relearning how to trust. What? Yo, I used to take it so personal if it burned me, but look what it done turned me. Crystallized ashes of the phoenix. Something is in my helix, got me feeling like I am the sun. Many stars in this big old universe, gassed up with natural funds. Gratitude that I use to pay back. Yo, I'm in debt. Look what I've become from what I've gained and from where I've left. So why should I dim my light when I had to fight through to see through the cobblestone steps? Defog the looking glass like, thanks, love. I'm witnessing you. Beef I've had with myself is well done and waste of time and diminishing too. Of course, mistakes are not rare. Still, we're overcome. Fine wine with a better pour. My mind is not a corkscrew. I'm a bowling one on the strike force, placing these pin downs in the middle of the ring. The space I assert is my fort, but I'm absolutely not who I am without support, and I am without a cage. So I gotta sing, but it feels better with a chorus. I seek harmony, always written forward. My borderline doesn't have it as, it's just, I used to be too porous. Now I'm just fortified when I want instead. I can't ignore it and store it into passivity. Adjustment is creativity. The finish line is defined with proclivity. The finish line is a perfect time for new beginnings. Like Elaine Thompson, you don't have to know me to show me that I'm still winning. 35 and I'm still trimming off the excess. Still finding new ground, planting seeds for success. What I leave behind is what I see ahead, and that's on my mama like Donda. I'm certified like CLB. I'm swinging my way out like Vladdy G, and if it don't play off, I'm joking like I'm in Memphis, Tennessee, and in my own rhythm nation, we just dance free like moving limbs and spirit without price tag. We just be free, and we see free costs a lot, but something in the range of sacrifice, and you can't have it all in this life. Still, it's life, and that's on everything, everything, everything. It's on everything. Ain't that right? All right, so we got one more piece we're gonna do. Yeah, let's see how we go through this. Let my ancestors guide me. 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 My ancestors are vicariously living through me. And that nearly threw me off, put me off on my ass, overwhelmed by the past. But my ass must be fat because it makes it more comfortable to land back. These hand-me-ups helping me to stand black. Black as the night sky, blanket with bright stars, long legs so I leap far. What's a hurdle to a brother with the zeal of a cheetah and the patience of a turtle? Further and further into the abyss, the spectrum of who I am, I fully persist. I exist, rooted in nappiness, blue magic happiness, a whole lot of confidence, a little bit of sappiness, because I'm connected to the genesis that led me here. Peace to the revelation. It's all respected. Thank you to my ancestors for guiding me, providing me. Yes. Thank you so much. That'd be all my pieces for today. Really have much appreciation, much love. Thank you for the opportunity.
Look, I don't know how y'all got this lineup, but jeez, man. David, I appreciate you, brother. Seriously, I appreciate you. And I really, again, I hope folks are listening to those words and not just listening to them, but hearing them, right? Feeling them, understanding where they're coming from. Again, we want to challenge you to rethink and reimagine. We're not here just to talk about Dr. King Jr. and Viola. Davis, because you know people mess up Davis and Desmond all the time. We're here to challenge your thinking of what Blackness is and what Blackness isn't, what Blackness can and will be. So I appreciate you. So next up, we have Alice Penny. Alice, welcome. From Bring On the Sunshine. Bring On the Sunshine was launched 11 years ago as a grassroots solution to meet the needs they saw in our community and bring people together to celebrate and support people of African descent here in Canada. Over the last 11 years, Bring on the Sunshine has hosted numerous pop events across the region, including plays, dance workshops, educational panels, diversity cafes in real communities, and more. Today, they bring us the Ngorimba Arts Foundation, a group made of youths in high-density suburb of Mbare. They perform and teach the traditional dances of the people of Zimbabwe. Clayton is the group founder and lead, a multi-instrumentalist and choreographer. First, we're going to have Alice to introduce the video. Alice, welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chris. It's very hard to be at the end of such a powerful panel. And so just a thought that occurred to me as we were talking. We talk about the arts and culture, but you know, I don't think there was any such thing in Africa. There was no arts. It was the history. Our history was in the arts. So a lot of what we do as Bring on the Sunshine looks like art by European standard. But this is how we tell stories. Our dancing, our singing, our instruments, all of it serves a purpose and gives meaning to our culture and shares the story with the next generation. Now, Africans believe in something that in the English language has been difficult to render. Words like Ubuntu, Boto, Wunu are common in languages across Africa. Loosely translated, they would just say humanity. But what we found is that the meaning in English isn't what we mean, right? And so I'll just read to you what how Desmond Tutu defines it. Ubuntu, you know when it is there and you know when it is absent. It speaks about humanness, gentleness, hospitality, putting yourself out on behalf of others, believing in vulnerability, embraces compassion and toughness. It recognizes that my humanity is bound up in yours, for we can only be human together. So, that I wanted to share that as we're talking about Ujima, because again, these are concepts that I find that we have to define on the North American context, but we never had to define in our motherland because it was part of how we lived our lives and what we did. So Bring on the Sunshine serves to connect us with the motherland and bring to you pieces that I grew up with that may not be readily available to you. And so I hope you get a little something from the next performance. And for us, it is meaningful because we're engaging with youth back home. The struggles of colonization and everything else didn't leave Africa untouched. If, you know, in some ways, I can tell you many horror stories. I recently sat down with my grandfather, talked about the missiles that flew down when they were in the fields, right? So there's many stories in which we were affected that not necessarily shared when we celebrate World War II or any of these events that are recorded in European history. So anyway, please enjoy the next piece brought to you by Bring on the Sunshine. Thank you for having me.
Makadini mose kumativi mana enyika. Ndinoitwa zita rangu Clayton Tendai Martha. Ndini mutungamiri Ngorimba Arts Foundation. Ngorimba Arts Foundation tinoita mutambo yakasiyana siyana yechinyakare chedu chenyika ino yeZimbabwe. Tinosanganisira mutambo wembakumba unoitwa kumasvingo unopembererwa zvikohwa zvedu. Toita mutambo zvekare watinawo wemhande unotambwa nguva yekukumbira mvura. Tine mutambo zvekare watinoita unonzi dinhe kana kuti madanha, mutambo unoitwa apo vanhu tichigadzirira zvikohwo zvedu. Toita zvekare mutambo unonzi Jerusarema Joro Mbende, uyo mutambo waitambwa nguva dzemuchato, nguva dzewanano nevanhu vechikuru. Tine mamwe mutambo zvekare yatinoita yekumatebhelele ndakasangana nedhama sichikicha. Kozoita dziyo watakabata instruments iyi inonzi mbira. Some they want to call it tapiam, but I just call it mbira as it is. Mbira is our ancient instrument This instrument is played by our old fathers. kusvika pamazuva ano muri kuonawo mese kuti technology iri kuupgrade asi isusu zveduka chivanhu chedu chakagara chiripo chinongoramba chiripo chakadaro chakatoupgradeka kudhara saka tichangoramba tichingochichengetedza sekukura kweart vamwewo vanozosanganisawo traditional necontemporary kukura kwebasa hazvirambidzo tinoita zvese. We are all the more than welcome to, we are free kuita mutambo nepamunotamba navo asi isusu tikuramba tiri pachivanhu chedu takadzigira originality yedu chaiyo chaiyo. kune vari kucanada uko tinoda kusimbisai kuti tinokutendai nemukana wamatipa uno kuti timbokuratidzaiwo zvatinokwanisa kuita. Kana paine zvimwe zvatichange tichawedzera kuti unyatsoita mutakunanzwa iyi inzwisa chete asi mutakunanzwa uri kuuya iyi inzwisa chete asi tichakugadzirirai mitambo yekuti kana patinouya ikoko munonyatsoonoti aiwa vakomana ava nevasikana ava vanga vakagadzirira zvinhu. And likely I would like to say thank you very much to bring on the Sunshine for working with us and giving us the good opportunity. You are so blessed. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Just a quick note, folks. I know we're having some technical difficulties on Teams. Again, this will be recorded. We apologize for that. No, this is a struggle that we've been through, doing live events on Teams. So I apologize for that. But the recording will be posted on the website. Just note, it'll be on the website for folks who aren't able to catch some of the video where some of the audio is missing. It will be recorded on the website. So again, I want to Bring on the Sunshine. Alice, thank you very much for this opportunity. I want to thank everyone who's involved. David, my brother, thank you. Dwayne, Tennille, much appreciated. Jamal, the entire organizing team in the background, Megan, Wendy, everyone, thank you so much. Much appreciated for this. I really appreciate it. So just quickly, just want to remind folks some of the other events that we have popping off. Sorry, I should speak proper English. Some of the other events that we have going on. I have my tie. I'm trying to balance. I got to take this thing on and take this off and put on my uniform, a hoodie. If anybody knows what I rock, ask the president and the provost. I wear a hoodie. That's what I do. We have more events coming up on the 10th at 12 o'clock. We have Acquia talking about research and learning. Acquia is the international recruitment specialist in the registrar's office. We also have talks with Nancy from our office, their director in our office. We have Clive. Big brother Clive from the Department of English on that same date. We also have Aaron, my brother, speaking, PhD candidate. On Friday, February 11th at 11 a.m., we have Dr. Walker from across the street, Laurier, Associate VP, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, Professor in Department of History. I've known Barrington Walker, Dr. Walker for a very long time. So I appreciate he's coming out here about our history speaker series. So thank you very much, folks. Appreciate all the work and effort has gone on to this, all the speakers. Again, y'all do fantastic work. I mean, it just all coalesced fantastically. We're all on the same page. We're all in these spaces. We're understanding. We're thinking again. We're challenging to reimagine and rethink what we're doing in this space when it comes to quote unquote Black history. Looking at these intersections, looking at the togetherness, bringing us all together. Understanding different voices can also mean a collective song to push us forward in what we're trying to do. So folks, I want to say again, thank you so much. Have a great day. Thank you.